everybody. I'm Dickson, and I want to thank you for joining me today. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about, pretty important. I think the first question probably is on most everyone's mind is, where the heck have I been? So I'm going to answer that because, as you already know, our plan was to have some on-the-water training and finish up the year working the mechanics on the water. But all of a sudden that was slowed down to a dead stop. And I want to tell you about it. But then I also want to tell you about what's coming up moving forward. So with all that being said, I'm going to tell you a little story. And I won't make it too long. But I want to tell you just how it all happened. As you recall, my son and I, along with Allie, ran into a school of hybrid stripers on, I think, the second or the third little video that we made. And we caught a bunch of fish that day. And when we started counting, we thought it was probably 35 or 40 fish. We weren't quite sure, but it was a bunch of fish. And we moved on to the next day, and the day after, I started getting pains in my shoulder. Now, I know I've shared with you all before that I think it was 2012, I had a rotator cuff surgery. Very successful, and I've been fine ever since. But it started hurting, and the pain that I was having was exactly the same kind of pain as I had when I had my rotator cuff. So I'm thinking to myself, I certainly hope I didn't re-damage my rotator. So at any rate, I go to day 3 and to day 4. Like most old-timers like me do, you don't run to the doctor. You wait a few days, see what happens. So all of a sudden, day 4, day 5, it really hurts. So now my wife talks me into going and see our GP, and I did. And I was hoping that all he had to do was take a quick look and then give me a shot of cortisone and send me on my way. Well, when I met him and I told him and showed him the restrictions that I had with my shoulder, he said, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and get an MRI and see what's going on. Okay. I don't argue with the doctor, as long as he doesn't argue with me about fishing. At any rate, we go get, just across the street actually is where this imaging company is. We go across the street. We schedule an MRI for, I think it was that day or the day after. But I wasn't able to get the results of it until the following morning. I got a phone call, and it's from my doctor. And he said he needed to see me right away. Okay. So now I'm suspecting the worst. And what really scared me was my doctor that did the surgery on my shoulder back in 2012 told me don't tear it again because it was such a bad tear. He said I wouldn't be able to fix it a second time. So I said, okay, this doesn't sound good. But I'm hoping and I'm praying that it's not my rotator cuff. So I go in and see the doctor, and you know how they do, they take your temperature and do all that stuff, put you in a room, and then I had to wait till the doc came in. Now I've been seeing that doctor, my wife and I have been seeing him for 30 years. We're actually more like family than we are doctor-patient. And finally, after about 10 minutes, he walked in the door. And when he walked in, I saw this washed over look on his face that I had never seen before in 30 years. I've never seen this guy looking like he had just lost his puppy. You know what I mean? So I didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything, but the nurse left, and he sat down at the computer, still hadn't said anything. But I still see this look on his face. So I took the initiative and said, hey, Doc, I can tell by the look on your face that this isn't going to be a shot of cortisone and you're going to send me back out on the lake. And he turned and looked at me with this washed out look. And he said, Don, you've got cancer. I said, what? I was suspecting the rotator thing, but never this. He said, you've got a bone cancer. And obviously I was floored. My wife was floored. And he said, now the first thing we got to do, we know it's massively in your shoulder. Your shoulder is really damaged. He said, but we have to go next door again. We got to get a PET scan to find out if it's just in your shoulder or if it might be somewhere else. And he said, you need to do that right now. I'm calling right now. You go next door, you get this done. As soon as they can have you in. Well, they got me in about 2 days later, as I believe it was. But I didn't get an answer from them. I'd say, well, my wife's right here. It's probably 3 or 4 days, wasn't it, babe? 3 or 4 days, we still haven't heard anything. Now, when you hear that C word, you're anything like me, you know, I need to know what's going on here. What's the diagnosis? Is he going to tell me I've got 3 months to live or something? You know, I'm like, I need to know something. Finally, we get an answer. And he said, we're sending you to this, what do you call it?
Oncologist. Cancer doctor.
What do we call him again? The cancer doctor. Okay. He's, actually I have a team of 5 doctors, but he's the guy that oversees everything. Any rate, I go see him and he's got all of the records. And in the interim, they had done, once they found out that I had this bone cancer, they wanted to do some biopsies. So they did a biopsy on my right rib cage. They did a biopsy on my pelvis. They're checking to see, because the PET scan lit up like a Christmas tree. When I went in there, they found out I not only have it here in my shoulder massively, but I have it in my left rib cage, my right rib cage. I've got it in my pelvis. I've got it in my lower left back, my lower right back, and my lower upper back. Whew. So I'm getting all this news going from catching 40 fish a couple of days ago to I've got cancer all over the place. And so now they've got to determine what kind of cancer is it. They found out that these biopsies showed that, fortunately, at least, it wasn't in any of my soft tissue. It was only showing up on my bones. So they said that's a pretty good thing. They also said that normally when you have this type of cancer, it comes from, could be your prostate, could be your bladder, comes from somewhere else and just attacks your bones. Well, when they did all of the tests and everything was said and done, they called us in and said, we've discovered what we have here. So at any rate, doctor says multiple myeloma. I said, okay, doc, explain that to me. So he started going through this litany of, medical terms like most doctors do, that we don't have a clue what he's talking about. But I'm listening intently, hoping that I can at least get a little something, to get an idea of what my future might be. And when he finally stopped talking, which seemed like it was forever, I said, listen, doc, I said, I'm a pretty simple guy. And I said, but I want to know, because I had a very close friend who was told one time, about 15 or 20 years ago, they told him, the doctors told me he had 3 months to live, that he could either go home and die or he could die at the hospital. So obviously, that's my only experience with this kind of thing. So I'm thinking, are you going to tell me I've got 3 months to live? Or, with the Lord's help, and most of you already know that I not only believe in God, but I trust God, and I know that He's involved in everything that happens to me, period. I said, with the Lord's help and your help, Doc, is there a chance that I could extend that a little further past 3 months? And he said, yeah. I said, so Doc, really what I want to know is, what's my future look like? But give it to me in lay terms, and give it to me the way it is. I really need to know. And he said, well, it's a cancer that, like most cancers, there's no cure. You can't cure it. There's no beating it. But you can live with it through treatment, so on and so forth. through the medications and through radiation. There's a lot of brand new medicines out there today. He went on to finish by saying that, 15 or 20 years ago, if I would have come to him with this, he would have said 2 to 3 years maybe. He said, but today, it's not unusual for people to live 10 years, in some cases 20 years. And I said, wait a minute, Doc. You mean with treatment, I can live another 20 years? I said, I'll be 98. I said, if the cancer doesn't kill me, my wife will have already thrown me out the house by then. I'm sure of that. At any rate, he laughed and he said, no, we get after this. He said, but there's one thing I need to tell you right now. We need to begin today. We need to get started right away on a treatment, and we're going to start with radiation. So, my friends, for the last 4 weeks or so, I've been getting radiation every day. And about that same time, a little bit later, maybe a week later, also started a series of medications. My wife will tell me again, what do we call that? Something targeting?
Targeted therapy.
Targeted therapy. It's kind of like, I think, a new terminology for a sort of a type of or a version of chemo, even though it's not chemo. But it targets a specific area, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm on the medication, and I'm actually doing pretty good. I shouldn't say pretty good. I feel okay. I told the doctor just 2 days ago, I said, if I wasn't taking radiation and all that, most days I wouldn't know I was sick. None of the cancer is in my soft tissues. None of it's not in any of my organs. They also told me that the cancer, this type of cancer, this myeloma, it normally will attack your kidneys. They really don't get along well. And he said, good news is your kidneys are clear. I said, okay, all right, we'll go with that. And then he said, the other thing is, most of the time you would for sure be anemic. And he said, you're not anemic at all. In fact, you're the opposite. You're way above what the normal person is. So you're good there. And the other thing was the white blood cell count. Was that it, honey?
Yep.
And he said, that was all fine. So there were a lot of positive, if there is such a thing, or a lot of positive things that have come out since this treatment started. Now, how long we go till we try to get this into remission, we're not sure. We just have to see how everything is working out. But for 4 weeks, he told me I couldn't lift anything heavier than my toothbrush. So, and it was really painful, my friends. I'm telling you, my arm was killing me. So the worst part about this is I started thinking, you all know how we set a hook when we're trolling. It's the one motion I cannot make with my arm. And then I started thinking, I am right-handed. And I've been a pretty good caster since I was 7 years old. But I've never cast with my left hand. Only my right. And I cannot do that. Remember I told you about the toothbrush? Through the radiation, I've reached a point where I can lift up. Oh, one of my friends sent me this the other day. Thank you very much, family friend. And I can lift a coffee cup now. I just can't fill it all the way to the top. So it's still quite painful. And this is the worst part of it, as far as where I have some pain and that kind of thing. But it's also what affects me when it comes to fishing. So the main reason I wanted to share this with you, most of you who really know me going back years know that pretty much when it comes to my personal life, I'm pretty private. I'm about as open as you can be when it comes to fishing and everything else. But private life, I'm pretty private. However, I've noticed that every time I mention my belief in God and His Son Jesus Christ and how much I believe in prayer, I will always get comments from my subscribers and them witnessing to me that they believe the same thing I believe. So with that being said, I started thinking there's 2 or 3 places in the Bible here that mentions if 2 or more people pray for the same thing, God will hear it and He will answer it. So I figured, well, wait a minute now. I've already got hundreds family members and close friends who know what's going on. But I've got a bunch of subscribers who are also Christian people who believe in God, who believe in prayer. So I didn't want you all to feel sorry for the old coach. That's not what I want. And especially in today's environment, people losing their jobs, losing their business, real heartache, no food. I mean, we're living in a terrible time right now. So my deal isn't any more terrible than everybody else's. I mean, and I get that. But I just wanted to call on all my Christian friends to shoot up a prayer for the old coach. I want to use every Christian friend I have, get them involved in my future to get this thing into remission. Obviously, you're understanding right now that there's no way I could have continued to do the on-the-water training. So how are we going to move forward and do some videos? And my thought was, because I've been, over the years, over 35 years, I've had a passion for what I was doing. And people say it all the time, if you really love what you're doing, it's not really a job and all of that. And that's so true. I've been very fortunate, earned a pretty darn good living doing what I love, which is fishing, but then it became something else. It became the teaching of fishing and sharing with the fishing world what Buck shared with me. So I have that passion. Nobody wanted to do the on-the-water training stuff any more than I did. I want to get it done. I want to get it done right on 4K camera stuff. And that is going to happen sooner or later, God willing. And here was my plan on that. If I can get the approval of the doctors to get in a boat, I don't necessarily have to go fish, but I can use some of my students, I can use my family, I can use other people. Alice just raised her hand, by the way. She's always ready. But at any rate, yeah, we can go and I can talk through the training, but they can actually do the fishing or the casting or the trolling and so on and so forth. So that's my plan. I'm going to get that done one way or another. It's going to be finished. But between now and the time I can get in a boat, right now I'm not allowed to be anywhere near a boat. Here's my plan. Normally the last thing that I deal with in all my training has always been mapping and interpretation. And today, with the ability to call up with an app, call up on your iPad or YouTube, call up your Navionics and pull up a picture of a lake anywhere in the country. My idea was to just take a random lake, I don't care what lake it is, or a random reservoir or a river, and pull it up, and today's lesson would be on that particular reservoir. Where would I do my fishing? How much could I cut out in my general mapping, and so on and so forth, and get to the bottom line answer. And then also do a thorough teaching on detail, mapping, and interpretation. And that could take me a year, but it could certainly easily take me through 6 months. And I'm hoping that within 6 months, I'll be back on the water. So with that being said, that's going to be my plan moving forward. And I hope you all stay with me. And I hope that you all will remember to pray for the old coach. And hopefully we'll get through this thing together and get back to doing what we love, which is going out and catching fish. I'm also going to be telling some old buck stories, and I'm also going to be telling some stories and maybe have some guests that will visit with me that are students of mine from the past, and talk about their success over the years, and just try to make it all interesting for you if I can, but also educational. It just right now is not going to be actually on the water. So I apologize for that, and understand nobody wants to do it more than me. 35 years teaching fishing. And you not only develop a real love of it. But you develop all these friendships and all of these people that are looking forward to getting better and getting better and getting better. And I hate that I have to disappoint any one of you, and I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to go ahead and get all of this completed so that you'll have a complete YouTube library of how to go out and be successful catching fish. So as I close this out today, once again, I want to apologize to you. But really, for 4 or 5 weeks, I couldn't get to you. There was no way. In fact, I'm sitting here today under my tree because I cannot walk down the steps out to the dock, and more importantly, can't get back up. I'm pretty stinking weak. So as we close off today, be sure not to forget to say a prayer for my wife. Like I said, she's took this a little bit harder than I did, I think, in the beginning. But we're together now. We're moving forward, and we're going to go attack this thing and do like we normally would do. We just move forward. So with all that being said, thanks for being my subscribers. Thanks for understanding, and I'm going to thank you in advance for all your prayers, and we'll see you the next time.